Ian here, and I am excited to share that we've expanded our roster of marketing guides. I'm Ian Cantle from Outsource Marketing, and as usual, we have Ken Tucker and Paul Barthel from Changescape Web. And today we're welcoming Apoorv Dwivedi from Fixer Marketing out of Kelowna, British Columbia, and Jeff Steck from Tellurica Marketing Systems out of Austin, Texas. So welcome, guys. So glad to have you on here.
Oh, thanks for having us on here. Yeah.
So guys, in this episode, I thought it would be really interesting to explore with our guides the biggest marketing wins that we've been able to help clients with in the past year, as well as the biggest marketing mistakes that we've observed that we would love our listeners to avoid. So we're going to go into a round table to ask these questions. And I'll start with Ken. Ken, what's the biggest marketing win that you've seen this year for your clients?
Omnichannel marketing. Those businesses that continue to make an investment in a robust omnichannel digital marketing strategy tended to do a lot better than those they did do a heck of a lot better than those businesses who decided to scale back. We've talked numerous times in previous podcasts about the world's more competitive, customer expectations, like we talked about with Jay Baer last week, have completely changed in the last 3 years, partly driven by COVID, partly driven by technology. I'm sure Paul I don't know what Paul's going to say. I have a feeling I know what he's going to say. But those businesses that have options where they can press the pedal to the metal in certain respects, while also having that ever pervasive omni-channel driven digital marketing strategy, have done the best. Businesses that in categories, like high-end home remodeling services, which clearly have seen a major slowdown across the board in the number of projects that are being done, and competition rising, have tended to stay level with their business growth or slightly growing for the most part. And so I think that that's a huge win, because for whatever reason, there's a softness in the economy, which I don't really understand. I think it's perception based rather than reality based or media driven. The economy for a lot of people and for most businesses, there are clearly losers, in the business world right now who are being hurt by this economy, but there are clearly a lot of industries that are doing well. So anyway, I think it's omni-channel marketing, always going to get my vote.
Awesome. Yeah, we've experiencing that as well on our side, that omni-channels becoming more and more important. So Paul, what about you? What are the biggest wins that you're seeing with your clients? Same clients as Ken, I guess, but maybe you have a different perspective.
Well, I think part of it is small businesses are actually starting to realize that they need automation in their business, and it can help them. Matter of fact, we have a client right now that for the longest time they didn't want to use any kind of CRM. They were doing everything manually, and it was just a real time suck for them. And so I had a few conversations with the person. They just, well, she's been with them for a while, but they've kind of given her some free rein, and she's like, I want to do this and this and this, and we're starting to put some things in place for them. And I think that small businesses that have resisted this, technology, that I've done it this way for 20 years, whatever it's been, and they just resisted change. Everybody resists change just to a certain degree, but I think if you look at that as a win, that these small businesses are starting to realize that, yes, I can use the automations, and it doesn't have to be you automate every aspect of your business, but certain redundant things can free up a lot of time for people so they can focus on other things. So I think that's a win for small businesses in general once they realize that.
Yeah.
Paul,
and have there been some specific automations that you've seen that have been either very popular to or have
missed call text
high
backs
return on
and
investment?
yeah,
What's
missed
that?
call text backs and review
Yep.
requests,
Yeah.
automating the review process.
Yeah.
Yeah, Paul,
And
I thought for sure you were going to talk. You were going to mention that when you have the privilege of already ranking well for SEO, but you need to dial up or dial down your lead flow to step on that Google ad gas pedal, and juice some more leads to come in, and then back off as you get your calendar booked, or your slate of clients filled up. I thought that was probably what you were going to talk about.
I was going to talk about that on a different question.
Oh, okay, good.
You spoiled it, Ken.
No,
right.
I set the stage.
That's okay.
And I'll move on. Jeff, what about you? What have you been seeing?
Yeah, I'll jump in and say I agree completely with omni-channel marketing. I mean, we're all duct tape marketers here. We all talk about building marketing systems, and you've got to be omni-channel to have a full and complete system. And things change though, so it's staying on top of what's changing. What are the new tactics that can fit into the omni-channel approach? We had a really big win in the spring of this past year with a client. We did some over-the-top advertising on streaming. It was very cost-effective. I think for about $800, we reached something like 24,000 impressions. I mean, not 24,000 people, probably 15,000 people over the span of about a week. We were driving attendance at an event. We just blew the attendance out of the water. It was a kind of a vendor days type of event where it was a retailer that was bringing in their suppliers and doing demonstrations, and it was food oriented. So of course there were free food samples, and the vendors were running out of food early. The streaming over the top ads on the streaming service combined with a solid Facebook campaign is what we did. We're also experimenting to augment the digital strategies with postcard retargeting. So people can visit a website and be browsing for something of interest, and then they get a postcard in the mail 3 days later to reinforce that. That old 7 touches, we've heard has gone up to 15 touches. I even saw a study, I think it was Jeb Blount, published some metrics that depending on the audience and how warm they are, it may take as many as 50 touches to get people's attention. So you got to be omni-channel. You got to be trying new things and not getting stuck in the ways of the old things that used to work and maybe don't anymore, and you don't even realize it yet. There's constantly experimenting, looking at data and trying new things and making it part of that entire system approach.
Jeff, yeah. I love that. Offline integrated with online, it can be very powerful. And a lot of people, I think, have completely forgotten about the offline stuff. So it's actually kind of a wide open space right now for a lot of businesses.
Yeah, I agree. I think COVID is, had a lot of responsibility in offline kind of dropping off too, certainly with live events. I'm seeing live events coming back strong too. So not just the event that I mentioned, but networking events in general and other kinds of workshops and, different outreach that businesses can do to reach their target audience and bring them in and get introduced to them and start working them through the funnel.
Yeah. And hey, I just always like to make sure that, not every person that's watching this or listening to this will really understand some of the concepts we've used, especially since, they might be joining us for the first time today. Ken, do you want to just explain what marketing is to people just so they understand it?
What omnichannel is that what you asked?
Yeah.
So, I mean, really, it's just using multiple channels in concert with one another to get, thank you for teeing this up, force multiplication, which is one of my favorite phrases. When you're doing multiple things in conjunction with each other, ideally you're going to get that force multiplier. And so if you're, doing social media posts on a regular basis, if you're working on your website, conversion optimized website with SEO strategies and content marketing and content repurposing, running some ads in the right places where your ideal clients or customers or patients tend to hang out. As Jeff talked about, there are offline channels that could be at events. It could be direct mail. it's really just, understanding who your ideal customer is, where they're at, what they're going to respond to, and then creating an integrated marketing strategy and system to leverage the channels to be able to get to them. And through the marketing hourglass, the know, like, trust, try, buy, repeat, and refer.
Yeah, that's awesome. Good explanation. Yeah, it's like that ever-present person that just keeps popping up in your life, right? That's what we can do as businesses, not to be an uninvited pest, but to be an invited guest, right? And just to be accessible to people all the time in every channel that they're in. So yeah. That's awesome. And Jeff, just a quick question about, you were talking about streaming service ads. Was that on like a Spotify or what was that on?
We were specifically on Hulu. So people will be watching, their shows on Hulu, and those little ad segments that get inserted in. You can reach them. I think it's like 3 cents per impression is what it works out to. It's very cost effective. But there's a number of streaming services you can do. The generic term for that is over-the-top advertising, OTT. Of course, you have to have the video production that you're using for the ad. That probably costs more than the ad itself, or the ad spend itself.
Yeah. Although I have to tell you, I was watching some sports replays on YouTube recently, and there was this ad for a heater, right? Obviously, where I'm living, it's getting colder, so they have an ad for this space age amazing heater that costs nothing. And what made me laugh so much about it was that they had obviously used like an AI tool to create the whole ad, because half the visuals didn't make any sense to what, like, yes, it made sense to the words they were using. It didn't make sense for the ad. So that was an example of like ad got bad, but I'm sure they still get their sales. But
you mentioned YouTube. YouTube can get some huge results, especially depending on the demographic. The younger generations are spending a lot of time on YouTube. But I heard the other day that the sweet spot now is getting your message out in 6 seconds. 6 seconds, because that's the amount of time that YouTube must play an ad before you can skip it. So if you can get your key message out in 6 seconds, it's going to be seen.
Well, and if you get it done in 5 seconds and somebody skips it, you don't have to pay for the ad, right?
Yeah, you can't skip it. And I think that there's that counter that comes before you can skip it. So that's where the 6 or 5 comes in. It'll be seen because it can't be skipped.
Okay.
But if you have a
and there are
20-second ad,
ads too. Yeah.
Awesome.
Apoorv, how about you? What big wins have you seen for your clients this year?
Well, I mean, so before I get to mine, I just want to kind of add on the whole omni-channel and offline stuff, right? Absolutely, 100% for sure, right? I think what we saw over the last few years was, if you go back kind of 5-10 years, there's this big rush with people that were kind of moving towards digital and a whole bunch of online digital stuff, and they were starting to abandon things that used to work, like direct mail and direct marketing, and what we as marketers call out-of-home advertising, other people call billboards or signage or things like that. And it was working because they were getting really good results on digital, because that's where the audience was, and it wasn't oversaturated. And now what we're seeing is, okay, digital's now become like super saturated, and so having this combination of digital and offline is just incredibly effective. In fact, just some of the things like you guys are saying there, like adding in direct mail, right? Adding in like physical postcards, right? Which, a couple of years ago, people said, why are you doing postcards? And you should just be doing everything online. Well, because it's effective, it works, right? Same thing with the billboards, right? The 6 second rule is interesting because, we used to have a 3 second rule with billboards, right? You had to get your message across in 3 seconds or less, right? People are driving by at 50, 60 miles an hour or something. Are they going to be able to kind of get your message completely, right? So, I think that's just a good rule for marketing and advertising in general across the board.
I think you need 1 second for Paul.
Yeah, for Paul, just 1 second quick, right to
on a billboard.
Drives so fast. Or?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I think the big story this year for sure was AI, right? So, it's been about a year since ChatGPT 3 came out to the general public. And it's a double-edged sword here, right? So there's a lot of great things that have been done with AI, and there's a lot of, let's just call it crap, right? So, like you were saying, like that, the one ad creative where the visuals just don't make sense. So, we'll come back and talk about that, and we'll talk about mistakes and stuff. But in terms of the wins with AI, and Paul was talking about automation, but there's a lot of ways that AI can be applied really effectively to help businesses with their marketing. And so, one of the things that we've been doing a lot of and have been seeing really good results with this year for our clients is local SEO. So using AI for local SEO. And so for the audience, when we say SEO, what we're talking about is search engine optimization. So that's making sure that your website and your profile and stuff are showing up on search engines like Google and Bing. And so, search engine optimization is all the stuff that kind of goes into helping you rank when people search for different things. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes with SEO that's like just really, really tedious, like a whole bunch of like little things that you have to do here and there. And you're all nodding your heads because you know exactly what I'm talking about, right? This little adjustment here, right? You have to change this description, you have to change this title, you have to add this link. And there's a whole bunch of little things, and each individually doesn't make that big of a difference. But when you do like thousands of them, then they add up. And so what used to happen before was, it was very manual, tedious process. And now you can use all these AI tools to really speed up that process. So still have really good quality human generated content that answers a person's problem or answers a question that they're looking to ask to a search engine, but have all the back end SEO stuff driven by AI. And we've seen like in local SEO. So local SEO is when you're searching just kind of within your own surrounding market. But we've seen clients go from search terms that were ranking in the 20s to the top 4 or 5 in big metropolitan markets for competitive key terms, because we're able to do all that tedious back end stuff that no one ever really had the time to get to, or if we're going to do it manually, it was going to take months and months or years to get done.
And cool. Just to clarify, Apoorv, it sounds like that you're using AI on behalf of your SEO efforts in order to help them. It's not really something your client would be using for themselves necessarily. It's a way of raising the level of what you're able to provide. Am I reading that right?
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing really preventing businesses from doing it on their own. It's just knowing what to do and how to do it, I think, is probably the tough thing and what it comes down to, right? So and I think that goes for AI in general, right? Like people jump on these tools and they'll just say, I'm going to use the tool to do this or that, but you have to really know what you're doing. If you know what you're doing, then you can use the tool to help you, right? Like one of the analogies I always give people is, like you don't want to be a tool, you want to be the carpenter, right? Mm-hmm. The carpenter has all these tools at their disposal, and they just get, you can get a new, better quality tool, right? Help you do a better quality job, right? That's what you have to understand, right? So if you know kind of the basics of carpentry, how to put together a frame or a house or whatever, you use different tools to make it better, have it go faster, make it stronger, etc.
Yeah, awesome. Before we move on to the next question, any last thoughts on wins, guys, or should we move on?
We can move on.
I'll take that as let's move on. All right. So Ken, I'm going to start with you again, and then we'll go around the group again. But what's the biggest marketing mistakes that you've observed this year?
There are two that I want to talk about. There are a lot. Unfortunately, it's probably a lot easier to talk about the mistakes that are being made than the wins. Yeah. The two I want to talk about are not doing text marketing or email marketing. It depends, it depends on the nature of your client and your business, whether text or email or a combination, ideally. It just blows me away how many people are not trying to build and leverage a list. It is absolutely essential for the survival and the growth of your business, in my opinion. Text marketing is the fastest way, or email marketing, if it's appropriate, to get reactivated customers, to get those people who raised their hand and expressed interest and then dropped off the radar. If they've still opted in and staying, you still can stay in front of them with email or text marketing. Eventually they're likely to raise their hand and say, yeah, okay, I'm ready. Not everybody's ready to make a buying decision when they visit your website or even have that initial conversation with somebody in your business. The second thing I want to talk about is content repurposing. Content repurposing is the engine that can drive the local SEO efforts that Apoorv talked about. And I'm blown away by how many people don't want to make that extra investment. They just want to pay for a blog post here, for a video there, even if it's part of an integrated digital marketing service that maybe they're even buying from us. To make that an additional investment, it blows me away that people aren't willing to take the content repurposing strategy. By that I mean, you can write a blog post, you can use that blog post to turn it into a video. You can take a video and you can repurpose that to use the transcript to turn into a blog post. You can break those out and chunk those out into social media posts. Now, guess what? You got Omnichannel. Content repurposing is a critical strategy that small businesses just fail to take advantage of.
Those are great, Ken. Why do you think, like, you raised two mistakes that were really mistakes of omission, right? People aren't, or businesses aren't leveraging text or email marketing, or they're not leveraging content repurposing. Why do you think businesses don't take advantage of those two things? Because they are very low hanging fruit, right?
Two reasons. One is they've tried a solution and they've been burned. They didn't get any results. Look, if you're going to use a text marketing system that your point of sale system gives you, and a great example is like a med spa. Med spas are sold these systems. Here, it's a business in a box. Here you go. Well, guess what? If you use that text marketing system, you're probably not going to be as happy with the results as if you used somebody who really gives strong thought to the crafting the right text messages and delivering those to the right audience at the right time. So a lot of people have been burned. They've also been burned by hiring other marketing companies that, one, don't advise them of a marketing strategy. And to me, content repurposing, if you do marketing strategy, about content repurposing, and it's core to what you're doing. A lot of people may not opt to buy in at that level, which I think is a mistake, because they're missing all of the things we talked about on the wins, for example. But I think they've been burned. I've hired, a lot of people have hired people in what they think is the digital marketing space. Could be a website developer, could be somebody selling advertising. They're typically point solutions and they're selling what's good for them, not what's good for you. And because of that, people dismiss some of the most effective things that are out there.
Yeah. I mean, you were speaking to the choir there, or singing to the choir there, because, especially in the dental.
I wouldn't be singing. I'd be speaking.
All right. Thank you. We all appreciate that. Maybe I haven't heard you sing it. Maybe there's a reason.
You'd appreciate it, believe me.
But all of the things you raised are really key in, especially the dental industry. You used med spas as an example, but when you were talking about practice management software, CRM systems, man, like I get those questions now. Usually it's after a decision has been made, unfortunately.
That's right.
Because it's a new person I'm talking to. But man, if anybody's listening right now and you are considering a CRM system, a practice management software, whatever it is, like, you need to really think seriously about that. And no matter what your decision is, make sure it's an open system, meaning it has open connections, an API connection, or in the very least, a Zapier connection, because that will empower your marketing team, your marketing partner, to support you in a way that you wouldn't believe possible, because the practice management software, some of the CRMs, they're horrible at the marketing side. They have beautiful bullet points on their landing page when you're choosing to buy them that say
Right.
they can do everything possible from a marketing perspective. They're horrible at implementation for the most part. There may be a few exceptions, but I have not come across those yet.
Well, Zapier
Well, and even
requires open API.
even if they're solid solutions at delivering that, the intelligence that's required to drive those is not baked into those systems. And so they give the business owner, here's the capability, here's the possibility, go for it. Well, if you just, I mean, I think back to restaurants, they try a lot of text marketing and they give up on it. It's because they don't know what to do. I mean, they'll send out a broadcast here. There's no consistency, there's no segmentation, there's nothing that's interesting to keep people, the wanting to stay subscribed, unless it's constant discounts. You don't, guess what? Here's a news flash. If you're doing email or text marketing, you do not always have to offer discounts or add extra value. Sometimes you can just remind people, hey, it's going to be 60 degrees here in St. Louis today. Wouldn't it be a great day to go sit outside and have your favorite burger at our restaurant? That's all you need to say. You don't need to give them a discount. It's just like, oh crap, yeah, it is going to be 60. Let's get outside.
Yep.
It doesn't
Staying
happen
top
much
of
in
mind is
December.
key.
What's that?
Yeah. Staying top of mind is so important.
Yeah.
Yep. They got on your list somehow, and they're probably big fans. So all you have to do is remind them.
Yep.
Paul, what about you? Some big mistakes you've seen this year that other people should.
Well, how about not just this year, but mistakes that small businesses make? And this goes back. This is where I was going to talk about what Ken brought up. First of all, not having a strategy. Just throwing things against the wall, hoping something sticks. So the first mistake is not having a strategy. And this isn't a mistake so much that small businesses make. It's some of the things Google is doing is really screwing over small businesses in the ad space, where, and it really depends on your business, but if you are going to run Google ads and you only have a few $100s a month to spend, you're going to have to pick one service, because you just, we've seen this in the past where they have 5-6 different services and they want to run Google ads for every one of them. And they only have a few $100s a month to spend. You're not going to get results doing that, and going back to what Ken said about ramping it up and ramping it down. We have a client out in Nevada that, and granted, he spends about $3,000 or $4,000 a month just on ad spend. And I mentioned this on previous podcasts, that he'll call me up and say, hey, I need to dial this down. I'm too busy. It's like, well, you hire somebody. That's a good problem to have, but, and then he'll call me back and he'll say, hey, we need to ramp this up. I'm slowing down. So, and I think you can do that if you have significant ad spend. If you're only spending a few $100s a month, that's not going to work, because Google is using AI for everything. And it takes, even Google will tell you, if you make changes to your ads, you need to wait at least 2 weeks before you make another change. And if you're running their new Performance Max campaigns, which there's a lot of debate out there as to whether or not they work, Google will say you got to wait a month on a Performance Max campaign. You make a change, you have to wait like 4 weeks to see if it actually had any effect. But I think the other mistake there that small businesses are making is not having, their reluctance to allow people to self-book. Now, I get that to a degree with service area businesses, especially in a larger market, because if you just allow people to self-book without putting any thought into it, and there are kind of ways around it, but I get it. You don't want to have one person book an appointment in one area and then have someone else book an appointment. It takes you, 30 minutes to get there. And then somebody else books an appointment, it takes you 30 minutes to get there. I get that. But I think part of this is from COVID, is that a lot of people, and it's not just the younger generation, they want to self-book. They don't want to talk to you, at least not right away. They want to self-book. They want to go to your website and have facts. And we talked about this, was it last week or
it was last week with Jay, yeah.
The week before, yeah, about your facts. There are more than 6 questions people ask you, and you know what they are, and they should be on your website. And then you should not just have the frequently asked questions, but the should ask questions. And people want information, and we've talked about this in the past as well, that by the time people actually contact you, whether they call you or fill out a form, they've already done a lot of research, and they've probably narrowed it down from 10 or 15 companies that they may possibly hire to 2 or 3 companies that they're considering. And you have to have that funnel, that buyer's journey. And that's a whole nother topic, but you have to make the information available for people, or they're just probably going to write you off and not being responsive. This day and age, and this goes back to that missed call text back we were talking about. If you can no longer wait 2 or 3 days to get back to people. You can't even wait 2 or 3 hours to get back to people. They've moved on. And so the lack of responsiveness in the past, it was, I'm not going to say it was okay, but you could get away with it. You can't get away with that anymore. We live in an instantaneous society, and that's what people want. And we talked about that on the previous podcast with Jay, that it doesn't matter if you're a small business, because even if it's just a missed call text back, you have to respond almost immediately.
The interesting thing too about what you just raised there, Paul, is that most of the things you were talking about are equipped or made possible because of an omni-channel, robust CRM automation system, right? Like there are always workarounds, manual workarounds, but man, like the businesses that again get that into their systems are freed to focus on the interpersonal relationships rather than the people that want to do self-booking and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and when you're talking about small businesses, which is what most of us work with, they have a reluctance to this, but they're the ones that can benefit most, because they do have more limits on time and budget and staffing and things like that, and they can really benefit the most from a lot of these automations, and they are some of the most reluctant ones to embrace it and implement it.
Yeah. You raised the whole Google
They also
Ads thing. Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah.
There's a bit of a delay.
Well, I was just going to say, small businesses typically have a lot more agility than a bigger business to make change. And, we're in a change-driven world right now. We have been for the last 4 years now. And if you continue to do what you've always done, you're going to get left behind. I mean, Jay Baer made that very clear last week in our conversation. Small businesses actually have a chance to get ahead of this and dominate, where a large business can struggle because they've got so many review layers, so many players, so many opposing opinions. I think small businesses should be poised to take advantage of that.
I think you're absolutely right. And I think they always have been, right? If the small businesses that understand that they're in a boxing match with the big guys, they are the more adaptable, nimble fighters in the ring than the big guys who have to equip massive teams. And if they have to switch CRM systems, look at it. That sucker is going to take years, right? So that's awesome. Jeff, what about you?
Yeah, I agree with what y'all said. I think Ken, when you were talking, the phrase "the devil's in the details" comes into play. And Paul, when you're talking about trying to get some results on very small budgets, that kind of resonated with me too. I think the bigger embodification of that, is that even a word, is a lot of business owners, they're small businesses, the business owners wearing many hats, and maybe they're trying to self-market their business. I don't want to be too harsh, but without all of the knowledge and expertise and the tools to really do so. And I get it. I've been there in the past in another business that I owned. There is the need to start out small, but if you're not ready to hire an agency yet, get a good coach. Get somebody who's been there. Get in a networking group or find a mentor or an advisor to help through that. I'll give an example. We had a client come to us this spring, actually this summer, late summer. They had started in the spring trying to run their own Google ad campaign. And they had a very large budget compared to a lot of small businesses. They were running $8,000 a month. And their ad campaign was, Google, Facebook, they have these, we'll do it for you, make it easy. Definitely advise against not doing that. You're risking throwing money away. This $8,000 ad spend was going to ads that essentially were, hey, Google, go look at my landing page and make up the ad. So that was step number one. Just let the AI and the system make up the ad. So they weren't even controlling the messaging. Number two was do whatever you need to do to get clicks. They were optimizing for the wrong thing. Clicks is a metric. It's a valid metric. You can use it to compare against campaigns. But for most business owners, especially small businesses, it's not about the clicks. That's like saying Facebook is about the likes. It's about people taking action. It's about conversions. That's when somebody takes an action, they convert from one stage in the pipeline to another. So they were telling Google, make stuff up and optimize to get as many clicks as you can. Essentially, we don't care what happens after that. We don't care if they get to the landing page and bounce. We don't care if they get to the landing page and don't take any further action. And then just run the bill up to $8,000 a month. And that's what they knew how to do.
Google is always happy to spend your budget, right?
They are happy to spend your budget. So we took that campaign over. First thing it did was cut the ad spend in half. Then we started writing the ads for them. And then we started targeting for conversions. And guess what? Their lead, we still have some work to do. As Paul mentioned, there are delays. When you make changes, you have to stop and let some data build and then look at the results. But we've been relatively early on in this campaign. We've already dropped their cost per lead by 50%. So now all of a sudden the ad spend that we cut is going further. So I use that as an example to talk about, it's real easy to take advantage of, these tools and platforms. But if you don't really have the knowledge and skills and background to do it, you're not likely going to be as effective at it. Building an omnichannel marketing system. If you don't know the devil of the details of how all these things work, when they say, oh, it's easy, it does this, that, and the other thing, but then you have to connect it up and make it work and understand the data you're gathering and how to take action on that data. That doesn't mean that you have to hire an expensive agency. It means you need to know what you don't know and go out and get some help and find some resources. And it may be that hiring an agency is the most cost-effective way to get that done, because that's the world we play in, right? We stay up on what's going on and we're in it day to day. But don't make that mistake of, oh, I know how to market my business. I took a course in college 20 years ago. That's probably not going to cut it.
Well, yeah, and the other, going back to something you said, is you have to define what a conversion is. If you're running a campaign that you want newsletter signups, well, that if someone signs up for your newsletter, that's a conversion. That doesn't mean they actually bought something. And going back to Google Ads, if you leave it up to Google, if somebody clicks on your ad, that's a conversion according to Google. Hey, you ran an ad, they clicked on it. That's a conversion. Well, no, not really. They clicked on your ad. So define what a conversion is for the campaign you're running.
Right. And that's a deeper level of connection in setting things up so that, when you have control over it, you can tell Google what matters to you and what doesn't matter. You can put values on it and it can optimize for it.
Yeah. Yeah. What about you, Apurv? What are some mistakes that you've observed that you want our listeners to avoid this year?
Yeah, so there's a few things that we've seen this year, but they're kind of consistent with mistakes that we see businesses make over and over again with their marketing. And I'm just going to kind of ride this whole train of AI and automation and the latest greatest, let's just call it, right? So a lot of the times people feel they need to be on the latest greatest and they have to be using whatever that latest greatest is. there's all this buzz and there's all this hype that's out there. And they may have heard from a so-called marketing guru somewhere, oh, you got to be doing this thing, this is now the latest greatest, and so they jump onto that thing, right? And I wouldn't say there was a ton of this, but I did see some folks this year trying to do stuff related to augmented reality or virtual reality. This is something that's kind of been out there for quite a bit of time, honestly. But it comes down.
Augmented reality has been there.
Yeah, exactly, right. And I mean, there's a place for it, but for most small businesses, it's not the place, and it's because when we kind of like take a step back, we kind of come back to core marketing principles. It's one of the things we tell people is fish where the fish are, and like don't just jump on the whatever the latest greatest is because that's what the hype's about. But are your customers actually there? Right? If your customers are on augmented reality, great, right? If your customers are on TikTok, great. If your customers are on, whatever platform that is, great. But if they're not, then why would you waste your time there?
Yeah. Just you talking about that, Apoorv, reminds me of Pokemon Go. I don't know if you guys remember that, but that was to me the first big mainstream very viral with the younger kids, of course, but it was the first time I saw a potential marketing exploitation that could happen with augmented reality, where you hold your phone up and you get to see these characters if nobody, somebody doesn't understand what it is. But I remember at the time when that was like this huge bubble, because it lasted for a few months. But I knew a donut shop owner, right? And he was really interested in how can we exploit this to get more kids from the high school across the road into my store. And, do it. And by the time you're done coming up with a strategy, the fad is gone, right? So you got to be pretty careful which horse you hitch your carriage to sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, and like I said, like maybe there's a place for it, right? Like if you're in the gaming world, that's what you're doing, maybe it makes sense to have be on those types of platforms. But I think just in general, right, come back to that, like fish where the fish are, right? So if your customers are there, if your customers are active there, then that's a whole different story, right? And that goes for a whole bunch of other platforms, right? It goes for, we saw this year, Twitter rebranded to X, and then Facebook launched their version called Threads, right? So for a short while, everyone was jumping on Threads. That didn't really go anywhere. Who knows if it will in the future as well? But it's the same thing, right? It's, is your audience actually there? Does it make sense for you to be there?
Yeah. And to stay on the thread, not to tie that in, but to stay on the thread of AI.
I saw what you did there.
All of us on this as guides have probably been playing with AI for probably a couple of years at least now. And the tools were very immature for a while, and this year has seen a lot of growth in them. But as someone that's been playing with them, that we use them just like you were talking about, Apoorv, I have to say to our listeners, like, you can burn enormous amounts of your own time, energy, and money playing with these tools. And if you don't know what you're doing, even if you do know what you're doing, you can still burn a lot of time and energy. And so, like, you got to be smart about where you put your, which baskets you put your eggs into, for sure.
Totally. Yeah.
So this question I love is, and we'll go around the circle again, but I'll start with you, Ken. What are you most excited about for marketing in 2024 for clients?
Building speed of response systems. I just think it's such a critical thing, and the technology is there to do it, and to do it extremely well. We talked with Jay Bear last week, and providing automated responses when people go to your website and they type in questions on your website in a chat widget or a text widget, having answers for those. And you don't have to have all of the answers, but you have to set expectations. You have to be able to allow people to take the actions. The fast button that he talked about, having that fast button or that, where people can immediately jump the line, because people will pay a premium for that. And designing a set of solutions, you're going to make a lot more profit. It's not a race to the bottom if you're doing that. And right now, too many businesses are trying to fight in this race to the bottom because Google ads are a lot more expensive and competitive than they have been. There are a lot more players that are out there that are having to make investments in digital marketing because everybody recognizes, hey, the world just changed. I've got to be in this market now. I've got to be doing a lot of these things. You have the opportunity. Look, statistics show over and over and over again, if you're the first business to respond, you're very likely to win that business if you respond in the right way. And it's not price driven. That's the great thing. You can actually charge more money and win the business because you were first to respond. So, that's all driven around marketing and automation. It's all driven around changing the way you think about your business, creating those jump the line kind of scenarios while you're still properly managing all of your other customer, client, patient expectations. That's what gets me really excited. The other thing is just I still am so excited about the email and the text marketing, nurturing, and long term, short term, quick win scenarios that are out there that are available through a real marketing CRM. Don't be fooled, as Ian said. Great point. I'm glad you made it earlier. Don't think your practice management solution, even though it has marketing capabilities, is the right answer. When it comes to marketing, most businesses seriously underinvest in marketing. Buy the best marketing tool you can for the price and get the most bang for the buck, and then use the heck out of it to be the fastest to respond. You're going to see your business do well.
And to a trusted advisor before investing in your marketing software, right? Because just like a dentist knows which tools are best for which solutions or challenges they're coming across in somebody's mouth, like we're in this every day, all day, helping people. And if you don't rely on somebody that's like that, you'll probably make a mistake, because all of the sales materials sound spectacular. They're marketing automation companies. They are good at marketing, and so watch out for that. Yeah. Ken, I just wanted to just a little anecdotal thing. We were talking about AI with Apurv, and it's kind of threaded its way again through this. But you were talking about speed of response, and we've been playing with. We always test things out on our own channels before we actually try them out on clients. And one of the fun things we've been playing with is, again, they've a lot in the past, I would say even in the last 2 months, but on our website. So if anybody wants to have fun, go to outsourcemarketing.ca, play with the chat bot widget on the bottom right of it, and ask it whatever questions you could possibly ask. We've been playing with an AI chatbot on there, and we have been astounded by some of the responses we've gotten from people, because it's just been able to repurpose content like you were talking about earlier and feed it back to people through their questions. So it's stuff like that's becoming really exciting, to help people, not for the sake of having gimmicky things, but for the sake of actually answering people's questions. Very
right.
cool.
I mean, honestly, that's also the thing that scares me the most is, the faking of people's voices or faces, putting them into context, especially, I don't want to get into the political world, but there's a lot of opportunity to do bad and evil with AI. And people need to, they need to be on guard for that. But at the same time, there's so many great possibilities as well.
Yeah. Well, like, for example, we don't even know if Paul's a real person. So, he could be an AI avatar of a giant TLP going on there. So Paul, what about AI, Paul? What are you most excited about?
Well, kind of goes back to something you said earlier, is the maturity of AI. AI isn't exactly new, but in the context that we're talking about it and how it's used, it's still pretty new and immature. And you can get a lot of interesting results with AI, because it's still a relatively immature technology, and in the context that we're talking about using it. So I'm kind of excited about that. And I think that the fact, like we said earlier, that a lot of small businesses are starting to realize that they do need a real CRM. They do need speed of response. They do need automation. And they're starting to realize that. And if you've never used a CRM or automations in any way, start with the simple stuff. Like we said, the missed call text backs, the helping with speed of response, automating your review requests, because that way you don't have to have someone in the office manually sending these things out. And those just start, do something. But I think the fact that a lot of small businesses are starting to realize that, I'm kind of excited about that.
Awesome. What about you, Jeff?
Yeah, I'll jump on the AI bandwagon for part one of a two-part answer. I think the applications of it's starting to come into its own, like Paul said, and Ken as well. It's not perfect yet. There's still a lot it can't do, and it can be used inappropriately. But I think the judicious use of it, and that's where I would caution anybody listening to this, don't just jump on it and assume AI is going to do everything for you and make your life all rainbows and unicorns. It's a tool. And it can do a lot, but it still needs guidance. It still needs, you to check the results. I think ChatGPT may even now have a disclaimer warning, the content you get out may not be 100% accurate. So you've got to go back and check it. Don't just say, here it is, I'm going to use it. But run it through a plagiarism checker, reword it to be truly in your own voice and context. Check the facts and figures it's talking about, but still it's going to cut down on the time it takes to get something done and out the door and the level of effort immensely. And then that repurposing, I think it's huge in repurposing. I would definitely not ask ChatGPT or any of the other AI tools right now to write a 2,000 word blog article, but I would give it a 2,000 word article and say, generate 10 social media posts, generate a meta description for the webpage. There's just a whole lot of stuff it can do to help out with. That's part one. Part two of what's got me really jazzed up is some of the things that are, I'd say, becoming more accessible to smaller, medium-sized businesses. For instance, programmatic advertising. We haven't really talked about that yet, but that's a version of online digital advertising where you're very specifically targeting people based on their behaviors and interests, as opposed to just everyone in a zip code. Or you're even drawing an electronic, you'd call it a geofence, around an area and saying, we want to advertise everyone in that area. For instance, if your target market is builders and there is the National Builders Association, I'm just making that up, but if there's a big convention of builders, you might geofence around that event and target heavily for the 3 or 4 days that it's running. That used to be very expensive. You wouldn't even touch programmatic advertising without probably a $10,000 a month budget. That's come way down. The ability and the accessibility for small business owners to do that kind of online advertising, to do the over-the-top ads on streaming services that I talked about earlier. There's a lot of cool stuff coming and becoming available now. But the double-edged sword part of it is that, you've got to figure it out and learn how to use it appropriately. So again, I go back to don't try and do it all yourself. Find a guide, find somebody who can help you through it, or outsource it.
Yeah, Jeff, I love that you mentioned programmatic advertising. I mean, one of the things that I think is a really cool application, and again, a lot of people just don't want to do this, but it's like you can actually target the customers of your competitors. You can geofence your competitor's location, and anybody who goes in there, if they have their phone advertising ID, if they've got their GPS services turned on, you can capture their ID and now you can run ads to them. So if you're a restaurant, you already know somebody likes Mexican food and you're a Mexican restaurant, target your competitors and, give them a reason to come try your restaurant, and then follow up and nurture them with email or SMS marketing campaigns to get them to come back in more often and spend more money when they do. I mean, just there's so many low-hanging fruit opportunities out there that if you integrate a couple of strategies, even if you don't have a big marketing budget, integrating a couple of strategies where they're working in conjunction with each other, you're still going to get that force multiplication aspect. And yeah, a lot of things have come down in price while a lot of things are going up in price. So it's really an interesting dynamic we're seeing happening right now.
Yeah, that goes back to the comment that somebody made earlier about just don't assume because it's been working for the last 20 years that it's going to keep working. It's constantly staying up on what's changing and what's working now that might not have worked yesterday, and something that was working yesterday might not work today. So
yeah,
we need one of those sports podcast horns that they play whenever somebody says something. And so whenever Ken uses the term force multiplier, we need the air horn. It'll have to do for today. Apoor, what about you? What are you most excited about in the coming year?
Yeah, so you know what, I'm just going to keep building on Jeff's comment there about the programmatic and the geofencing, right? So Jeff explained it, right? So you can serve up ads to a very specific physical location, right, and only have ads displayed for that, right? And then Ken was talking about the Mexican restaurant example. But one of the things that we've seen, and I wouldn't say it's widespread yet, but it's pretty kind of exciting, is we work with a lot of accountants, right? So that's basically kind of the focus of what we do is the accounting industry. So accounting, bookkeeping, tax firms. And a big challenge a lot of folks in that industry have is around recruiting. And, we see that with lots of other industries as well, right? Particularly, construction and trades here in Canada and different markets as well. But if you take that idea of like programmatic and geofencing, we've seen people starting to do recruitment advertising. So you're not just going after your competitors' customers, you're going after your competitor staff, right? Mm-hmm. So think about how cool that is. What if you could serve up ads specifically just to your competitors' locations about hiring, right? And so that kind of leads into where I was going with what's exciting about marketing in the coming year is I think a lot of people have really started to see the value in marketing now. And they're starting to look at how marketing can be applied in a whole bunch of ways beyond things that they just traditionally thought about in terms of generating leads. And so, this whole idea around recruitment, right? And marketing working with, if the firm's large enough to have HR, or even just kind of working on recruitment branding, helping to drive better quality applicants, help the firm to basically stand out so they can hire more folks. Because at the end of the day, a recruitment campaign is just another type of marketing campaign. It's the same principles, everything in place. It's just, rather than go for customers, you're trying to go for hires, right? So I think that's really exciting to see, right? And I think that's actually just kind of the tip of the iceberg. We're going to see kind of that integration of marketing as people start to figure out, okay, yeah, this isn't just about generating customers, but I can use this for a whole bunch of ways to supplement and enhance my business.
Love it. I mean, I spent a good chunk of my career in the corporate world, and I remember learning very early on that the HR recruiting process was just what you said, Apoorv. It's just another target market and a target audience with a different message for the company. And man, you don't want your HR department being the ones that are doing the recruiting ads, probably not even the recruiting videos, the branding around your business. That's a big mistake, especially for smaller businesses where you might not even have an HR person, and you really do need to adjust your thinking of how are we going to attract people and who are these people.
Yeah, well, I think Paul mentioned it too, right? With his customer, where okay, you're bringing in new customers for the business, and they're saying, well, hold on a sec, we need to hire more people, right? And so a lot of small businesses kind of constantly do this juggling act or balancing act between, we need more customers, now we've got more customers, we need someone to actually do the work, right? And you don't want to hire too many people that have them sitting around twiddling their thumbs, not doing anything. You need the customers coming in, but it's this constant balancing, right? So, it's being able to kind of straddle that and go back and forth between them, right? I think we're just going to see more and more of that.
Yeah. Awesome. Any parting thoughts, guys? We've gone a little bit over time, but this was a really good topic, I think. All right. Good to close up. Well, I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you to each of you as your marketing experts to share your insights with our audience. I think this has been a really, really great conversation. And thank you to our audience for joining us today. I hope you found this topic really valuable and that it helps you, first of all, to use marketing strategies and tactics that are going to help you in the coming year, avoid the ones that aren't going to help hurt you, and then also some interesting things to be excited about, just like our marketing guides. If you liked what you heard today, please share it with other people. Spread the news. We don't want this to be the best kept secret. We want people to find value from this and to be able to leverage it in their businesses. So subscribe to our podcast. And until next week, keep calm and market on, folks. Bye for now.
Take care.